Okay, so you've shared some really insightful chapters with us, all digging into grief. It's such a complex thing.
It really is.
So for this deep dive, the idea is to kind of pull out the core insights from these readings, offer something that feels helpful, maybe validating, but doesn't just overwhelm you with information.
Exactly. We're looking at these chapters from books on grief, and what's striking is how they really push back against some common, maybe not so helpful ideas about loss.
Okay, yeah, let's unpack that.
Hmm.
One of the first things these chapters seem to challenge is that feeling, or sometimes that direct comment, that you should be over it by now.
That pressure.
Yeah, that pressure, exactly. Like there's some hidden deadline for healing.
And the harm in that, which these chapters really explore, is that, grief just isn't linear. It doesn't stick to a schedule. Loss becomes, it becomes part of your life, something you learn to carry, not something you just get over and leave behind.
You integrate it,
Yeah.
sort of.
Precisely. One source puts it so well, I thought. You never get over it. You get through it, and you carry them with you.
Wow. That lands differently, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, then there's that other common one. Stay strong. Often said with good intentions, I think.
Oh, absolutely. Good intentions. But the chapters point out how that can kind of force you to bottle things up,
Okay.
to suppress the very feelings that need air.
Right, like being vulnerable is weak.
Exactly. But grief, it actually needs vulnerability. These chapters suggest a better way, maybe. Like, you don't have to be strong, you just have to be real.
I like that. Real, not just strong. It shifts the focus inward.
Then there's everything happens for a reason. That one can be really jarring when you're in the thick of it.
Oh, definitely. Well, maybe some people find comfort in that perspective later on, right at the start. It can feel like it just dismisses the pain, especially if the loss feels senseless.
Completely. The sources really highlight how trying to slap a reason onto deep emotional pain can feel incredibly invalidating. Sometimes just acknowledging the hurt without trying to explain it away is more helpful.
Yeah.
As one chapter says, pretty powerfully, not everything needs a reason to be worthy of mourning.
That's potent. And what about they're in a better place? Another one that comes from a good place, usually.
Usually, yes. But again, the timing and the impact, the chapters note that even if you believe that, it doesn't actually take away the ache of their absence here right now.
Right. The missing them is still very present.
Exactly. Platitudes, even kind ones, can sometimes just skim over the raw grief. So the sources suggest something more grounded, maybe, like, wherever they are, I know you miss them deeply. That's okay.
That acknowledges the feeling right here, right now. Okay, and the last big myth they tackle. Time heals all wounds. We hear that all the time.
We do, and it's such an oversimplification, isn't it? The chapters argue that time alone isn't the magic healer.
So what is that?
Well, it's more about what happens within that time. Intention, actively grieving, remembering, that matters. And they also point out that some wounds, they leave marks, permanent ones. But maybe those marks signify love, not failure to heal.
Okay. So it's not about erasing the wound.
Not necessarily. One source offered this thought: time can soften pain, but love continues in different form.
It seems like a running theme in these chapters is how much our language matters around grief. The words we use, to ourselves or to others.
Absolutely critical. They can either open a door for mourning or kind of slam it shut. These readings really empower you, I think, to rewrite that script if you need to feel what you feel without judgment.
Which kind of leads into this other concept they explore, continuing bonds. This sounds different from the usual advice.
It is. It moves away from that idea that you have to move on and
Yeah.
sort of forget. Instead, it's about finding healthy ways to stay connected to the person who died as you move forward with their memory.
So healing doesn't mean cutting ties.
Not according to this perspective. The chapters argue that love doesn't just stop because someone isn't physically here. Keeping that connection alive, thinking about them, talking to them, feeling that bond is actually seen as natural, healthy even.
How do you do that practically?
Well, one way the chapter suggests is writing letters to the person you lost.
Letters.
Yeah. And they stress it's not about being Shakespeare, just be honest. Pour out what you miss, what you wish you could tell them, memories, struggles, anything.
Just the act itself is what matters.
Exactly. It keeps that conversation, that relationship going in a new way. There is this example in one chapter.
Right.
Something like, "Dear Dad, I heard our favorite song. Nearly dropped the milk. I miss your laugh, how you made things feel safe." Just simple, real stuff.
That makes it feel very accessible, real.
Yeah. And beyond letters, the chapters also talk about rituals. honoring memories.
Like lighting a candle, maybe, or keeping photos close.
Mm-hmm. Or cooking their favorite meal, playing their music, wearing something of theirs, creating a memory box, visiting places you love together. Simple things, but done intentionally, they become sacred acts.
So you don't have to stop including them.
No, the point these sources make is that love adapts, it doesn't die. Continuing bonds are a form of resilience, really. It's about letting go of the intensity of the pain, maybe, but not the love.
That's a really important distinction. Letting go of pain, not love.
Yeah. But there are those days, especially early on, when just existing feels like too much, when you feel like you just can't cope.
Absolutely. Overwhelming days.
And the chapters offer some really practical ideas for those moments. They call them small anchors in the storm.
Anchors. I like that. What kind of things?
Really basic grounding things like breathing, just focusing on your breath for a moment. Slow inhales, longer exhales. Like a 4-count in, 4-count hold, 6 or 8 count out. Just something to remind you you're right here, right now.
Pulls you back from the chaos a bit.
Exactly. Or grounding techniques, like the 5-4-3-2-1 method. Name 5 things you see, 4 things you can touch.
3 you hear, 2 you smell, 1 you taste.
Yeah, that one. It forces your mind back into the present moment, using your senses.
Simple, but sounds like it could be effective.
And journaling, too. Not necessarily long entries, but just jotting down words, feelings, even scribbles. A gentle release when talking feels too hard.
These chapters also talk about emotional safety, right? Protecting yourself.
Mm-hmm. Super important. Grief makes you feel raw, exposed. So creating safety might mean limiting time with draining people or in stressful places.
Setting boundaries.
Definitely. And really allowing yourself to rest without feeling guilty about it. One chapter mentioned creating a grief nest, like a physical space that feels comforting and safe where you can just be.
A grief nest. That's a lovely image. But what if?
Yeah.
What if these small anchors aren't enough? When do you ask for more support? That's hard to ask sometimes.
So hard. The chapters acknowledge that. They suggest looking for signs like feeling stuck in deep despair, pulling away from everyone, finding basic tasks impossible, major issues with eating or sleeping, or, importantly, having thoughts of harming yourself.
Those are definite red flags.
Absolutely. And they even offer simple ways to ask for help, like, I just need someone to sit with me, or could you check in on me tomorrow, or I just need someone to listen, not fix.
Takes the pressure off finding the right words.
Yeah. And they really emphasize the value of grief counselors or therapists, framing it not as weakness, but as courage, as self-care.
That's crucial. Taking that step is brave.
Totally. So on those really tough days, coping might just mean doing one tiny thing. Surviving the day is enough sometimes.
Okay, shifting gears a bit. The chapters also get into finding meaning after loss, which feels tricky.
Very tricky. And they're careful up front. They state clearly there's no silver lining that makes the loss okay. No lesson learned replaces the person.
Good. That feels important to say.
It is. But then they introduce this idea of post-traumatic growth. Not erasing the pain, but the possibility that transformation can come through suffering.
Growth, what does that look like?
It could be things like deeper empathy for others, maybe, more clarity on your own values, a renewed appreciation for life sometimes, or finding the courage to live more fully, not because of the loss, but emerging from the experience.
Okay, that makes sense. And they talk about identity too, right? Like, who am I now?
Yes, that's a huge piece. Losing someone close, especially if they were central to your life, often shakes your sense of self. You might have to let go of old roles or ways of being.
So how does a new self emerge?
Gradually. The sources suggest it involves honoring the person's legacy and how you live, but also allowing yourself to rediscover joy, to find new connections, to become, well, whoever you are becoming now. It's an integration.
And sometimes people turn that pain into purpose.
Yeah, that comes up too. For some, channeling grief into helping others or creating art or advocating for a cause related to the loss, that becomes part of their path forward, transforming pain into something meaningful.
But the key is you make the meaning. It's not just handed to you.
Exactly. It's not found, it's made. It's about asking, okay, what now? What kind of life do I want to live, carrying this love forward?
That's a powerful question.
Yeah.
And something these chapters also really foreground is the physical side of grief. It's not just in your head or heart.
Oh, absolutely not. The body keeps the score, as they say. Grief lives in the body. Chest tightness, stomach issues, aches, pains.
Fatigue, like bone-deep exhaustion.
Huge fatigue, getting sick more often, maybe trembling, sleep going completely haywire, even panic attacks. These are real physical responses, not imagined.
So what do the chapters suggest for dealing with those physical things like sleep, appetite, energy?
Gently. That's the key theme. For sleep, maybe calming routines, soothing sounds, but also just accepting wakefulness sometimes, not fighting it. For appetite, keeping easy snacks around, small meals, no guilt if you can't eat much.
Energy.
Redefining productivity. Getting out of bed might be the day's biggest achievement. And that's okay. Taking a breath is productive. Small acts count.
It sounds like being incredibly kind to your body.
Exactly. Gentle movement like a slow walk or stretching. Staying hydrated, simple food, the comfort of touch, maybe a weighted blanket, or just feeling sunlight, warm baths, and rest without judgment. Be patient with your body.
It's carrying a heavy load.
A very heavy load. Slow down. Be gentle.
Now, we can't talk grief without mentioning the famous 5 stages, right? Denial, anger.
Bargaining, depression, acceptance.
Yep.
And the chapters address them, but with a big caveat. They are not a neat checklist, not linear, not something you tick off and you're done.
Good clarification. So how should we think about them?
More like common experiences or feelings that can arise in grief. But grief is messy. It's like waves. You might feel anger one day, acceptance the next, then denial again. You might skip some entirely.
So they offer a description, not a prescription.
Exactly. Denial as maybe a shock absorber initially. Anger as grief with energy, maybe masking pain or fear. Bargaining as those if-onlys, often tied to guilt. Depression is that deep, profound sadness. And acceptance. Not as being okay with the loss, but learning to live with it, integrating it, finding ways to move forward.
And you can bounce between them.
Totally. Back and forth. Or feel multiple things at once. Everyone's grief is unique, shaped by the relationship, the circumstances, your own history. There's just no single right way.
Permission to feel whatever comes up.
That's the core message. Feel it all, without judging yourself for how you grieve.
And finally, these chapters talk about how grief changes shape over time.
Yeah. It evolves. That sharp, acute pain often softens. It doesn't necessarily disappear, but it changes.
That is a change.
It's described less like a constant storm and more like a quiet ache sometimes. A longing that gets woven into your days. A whisper instead of a scream.
And is it okay to feel better? Sometimes people feel guilty about moments of lightness.
That guilt is so common. But the chapters really reassure you. Feeling moments of joy or peace means you're healing. It does not mean you're forgetting or that you loved the person any less.
So healing looks like, what? Coexisting with the sadness.
Yeah, kind of. Sorrow and joy learning to live side by side. Being able to remember without being completely overwhelmed every time. Living fully while still honoring the love.
And hard days will still happen.
Oh, definitely. Anniversaries, birthdays, unexpected triggers, intense emotions can still surface. But that's a sign of love enduring, not a sign you're failing at grief.
And those moments of light, seeing beauty again, connecting with people, laughing.
They're not betrayals. The chapters frame them as testaments to your own strength, your resilience. It's okay to live again, to laugh again. You carry the love forward, maybe as a quiet strength inside you.
So, wrapping this up, the big takeaway seems to be that grief is just incredibly personal, always evolving, no right or wrong way.
Exactly. It's fundamentally about love, really, about figuring out how to carry that love forward when someone's physical presence is gone, allowing all the feelings.
And challenging those myths, honoring the connection, finding those small anchors, letting grief change. That's all part of it.
It's all part of your unique journey through it.
So a final thought for you, listening. Maybe reflect on how the love you shared still shapes you, how it shows up in your life now, and perhaps what's one small intentional thing you could do today, just today, to honor that enduring bond.